Welcome everybody to our regularly scheduled DSCA board meeting. I think the first thing I want to do is recognize Commissioner Mayor Alpert and congratulate her on the win. I thought you might be taking the afternoon off. Certainly you have a really interesting speaker, so we really appreciate you coming again. Congratulations. Let's declare a quorum if we could. I'm seeing everybody but Jamie. So we clearly got a quorum. Jamie's husband was in the hospital with a broken leg and some complications. So but he's out. So.
Oh, he's my dentist. He's my
dentist. Well, he's going to be in a cast for a while. So we don't have. Pardon? Oh, Peter should be. Oh, I thought Peter was going to be with us. Okay, so Peter Blanton is not here. I thought he was going to be on Zoom. So we've got a quorum. Clark.
Yes,
let's
sir.
first approve the minutes. Those were circulated yesterday or the day before. Were there any comments or edits to that?
I have one correction.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Peter Hardy approached me before the meeting started, gentleman sitting over here. He's listed as a guest when actually he is the official representative of Regency House.
Okay.
So he should be up
Okay.
one or two more rows.
And I'll own that error. That was,
okay.
Thank you.
So Peter, I apologize.
Don't worry.
So with that correction, do we have a motion?
Move approval with edits.
By Peter Fanning, second, Roger, Barry seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Treasurer's report, Clark, we asked you to do a little extra work this month and can you give us the thumbnail version of that report where we are financially?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, I'll tell you right away, the Seacoast balance as of today is $48.61.10. $4,861.10. So David asked me just to take a look at projections on how we're doing versus last year. And we have a balance last year, starting in November of $2,800, and we ended up after paying Robert Parsons, a couple of other things, we ended up with a final balance for November of $800.795. And December, which I said was our rainy month, we got credits of $10,375, so that really put us back in the chips. And this year, we're starting November with a balance for November of $49.42, and it looks like we have more than enough money to pay for Parsons bill, which we haven't seen yet, which, assuming it's like last year, $3,000 for the third quarter. And if we allow $500 for the party, we end up with the end of this month around $2,500.
So in summary, we're in better shape by a couple grand than we were last year. And our expenses have tended to remain pretty much the same, but it's the revenue side of things that improved a little bit.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. So,
Clark, for the notes, would you restate that final amount that's in the account?
The balance for today? Yeah, $48.61.
Okay.
10 cents.
okay, anything else?
Did you want some numbers on the current membership, where we have, last year we had, Patrick said we had 15 gold members. This year we have 5. But I did a total, if everybody pays their dues, platinum, gold, silver, and the condos, the total will come out to be $26,975. It's 27,000.
So,
And
go ahead.
anyway, so we've got some new members, Beso, and the others.
There's a couple that are very low.
Yeah,
So what we're going to do as far as next year goes is between now and our December meeting as executive committee, we'll get together. In the meantime, you'll draft a 25 budget. That the executive committee will review, and then we'll bring it to the full board, first meeting in December. Discussion, hopefully adoption. Good.
I am working on a budget, so.
Okay.
we'll get on.
Okay, and Jamie and I can help with some of the assumptions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Our guest speaker this month, and it couldn't be more time, is Bob Bunting. And thank you, Patrick, for the suggestion a few months ago. I think we didn't know totally about the storms at the point I think you made this suggestion. But I think Bob's presentation was really interesting. I've looked at it, particularly timely, given the storms and the downtown master plan group just being formed the other day. So, presentation was really good. Like I said, timely. Bob is CEO and chairman of the Climate Adaptation Center and extensive experience across government, academia, and he is very well known and respected in the area. I know many of you have met him and seen his presentation before, so this is our normal course, and we really appreciate Bob's time given all of his responsibilities and everything that's been going on. So without further ado, let me introduce Bob. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, and I love doing this kind of thing where I get to talk to decision makers who are thinking about what our future really needs to look at. The Climate Adaptation Center is going to have its 5th anniversary in February, and we'll be celebrating that at Michael's on East with 2025 Climate Champions Awards. We give awards to people who have lived in our communities, who have made sustained contributions toward climate adaptation. And some of those people you know very well: Bill Waddell at the Bay, Jennifer Romanecki, who built Selby Gardens' new climatized campus. There's more to go there, but thank God that happened last year, because we would have lost some very, very unique and rare archives that do not exist anywhere else on the planet. And because her work and her understanding of climate, she decided she was going to make some changes, and boy, did she make them, and it didn't take long. So to me, that was inspirational, and to our board, and so she was one of the people getting the Climate Champions Awards. And I don't know if you know Ed Childs, but he's received one for his work on cleaning up the Manatee River with the oyster beds, and Dave Tomasco, who is, helps keep our bay clean. And so these are really climate champions. And so we're going to have another big event, because I believe that the message that I deliver is not that happy. So we have to balance threat with our enthusiasm for the future, and people are seizing that. And if we can present information in the way that people can use it to make better decisions, that's what our goal is. I'm a climate scientist, meteorologist. I was lead forecaster for NOAA. I was the director of the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, and professor at 6 different universities during my career. So I've been in the field for a long time. I've worked for 5 presidents, and I work for Liz Upper. So, you know, in all humility and humidity, one of the things that is so important is that we have not made the connection between what science knows and what society thinks we know. And it's holding us back in our decision-making. And we're paying the price right now without even knowing that we had other choices that we could have made. And so this was a record year. We forecast that on April 4th at our hurricane conference, which is now a national event where we forecast the number of hurricanes, major hurricanes and storms. And we said that this year would be probably a historic year here in Sarasota. Boy, was it. 3 hurricanes in 65 days. It's never happened before. All of them creating major catastrophic damage. And part of our issue is that we've had a foot of sea level rise right here in Sarasota since 1950. We've lost 25% of our buffer to sea level rise. And the storms now, with a 3-degree warmer atmosphere, hold about 14% more water. And the water itself is 5 degrees warmer than it was in 1950. And that's rocket fuel for hurricanes. So our hurricanes are more frequent, they're more severe, and they're hitting us more often. And so the bad news is it's not going to get better. The good news is we have some great choices we can make on how we design our future to lower the risk from these events that we know we're going to have. The Indian princess that used to protect Sarasota has now moved away. She's not coming back. I have it on good. She and I have a really long friendship. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I want to start this with a positive point of view that we have good choices to make. But I will say this, we have about 5 years to make the choices, because then by that time, it's going to be in the can of whether we're going to just be another place or a special place. And it's up to this group and everyone who lives in our community to take this personally, because the top-down approach that I've been working on for 4 decades has not worked that well. And Einstein once said, if you do the same thing over and over again and you expect different results, then you're crazy. And I don't want to go down that way, so that's why we have the Climate Adaptation Center. It's the first one of 6 we plan to have across the nation. So it's all funded by donations. We take no government money. We do not want to be told what to think, what to do, and what the current leadership or lack of it decides we should say. So we're independent, and we give it loud and clear just the way it is, and it lands where it lands, and people do what they do with it. So how do I change? Okay. And thank you all who are online. One more promotion is that next Thursday and Friday at the University of South Florida, we have the Climate and Human Health Conference. We have 20 speakers from all over the United States, including 12 doctors, climate scientists, and community leaders. And it's meant for the public, and it's meant to help move our healthcare system to the place where it needs to be for the threats it's going to see in the next 50 years. This is like redesigning downtown Sarasota. Sarasota 2050 includes our healthcare delivery system, and that's what this conference is coming about. We have only about, I think, 3 dozen tickets left, but we have virtual tickets. You can watch it online if you want, and you can go to our website and participate in that, and I hope some of you will come. It's an amazing group that we're having. So in Sarasota, these are our top 5 climate issues. And number 1 is storms, of course, and number 2 is sea level rise, because they work hand in hand. And of course, our ocean chemistry, which is leading to our clean water or lack of it, our red tide or lack of it, and the medical problems that come with a water supply that's not always clean. I just want to say to you, 100 million gallons of sewage went into the Gulf of Mexico between Sarasota and Tampa this summer. 100 million gallons. When we say we want clean water, we have to understand that we're not designing for that, because that would have never happened if we did. We also have heat waves, which are very important, especially when they occur around hurricanes where we don't have power. And of course, it's all driven by climate warming, which right now, this year will be the warmest year, with about a 95% chance now, ever recorded in human history. Last year was the warmest. So how do you know that? Well, we have records back 800,000 years, and we know exactly year to year what the atmospheric concentration was every single year those last 800,000 years. And our ice cores and our sediments, and we can measure the air that was trapped in the ice 800,000 years ago and measure exactly how much carbon, methane, and everything else was in it. And those ice cores are in a laboratory in Boulder, Colorado. And if the power went out, we'd be cooked. So, anyway, next slide. So you've heard of the heat dome, but this is what we are having more of, this high pressure areas that develop in the summertime, and the air sinks, and when it sinks, it warms, and that dome keeps the heat in. And that's why we're having these excessive heat waves, where you hear heat waves lasting now, instead of a day or two, they last a week or two, and millions of people are having impacts from this. It's driving heat-related human health issues, because now the #1 killer in the United States from weather events is heat. It's not hurricanes. And we're going to be talking about this. Last year, we had around 3,000 deaths from excessive heat in our cities as people just basically cooked. And when the power goes out after a hurricane, we have hundreds of deaths, like we had in Hurricane Beryl when it went up through Houston this summer. And then the power was off for a week and people just died. There was nowhere for them to go. Next. Heat islands are really a choice. This is what I want to tell you. These are the choices we make when we do our zoning. Like we did our zoning last, I think, if I'm right, Liz, in 2006, and that's why we're looking at it again. When we do zoning, we give rights, property rights, and these property rights are very, very important to people, and they're very important to me. But that doesn't mean we don't have choices within those zoning rules that were made in a climate that is different than the one we have today. Just because we made them in 2006 does not mean we don't have good choices that we can make, but we need new tools so that we can keep our corridors open and keep our city cooler in the summertime when we're having these natural heat waves. We don't need to build heat islands in a climate that's warmed as fast as the one we're in. And that means different public policy than we have. We can inform that public policy. We can't make it, but we want to inform it. So we don't want 5 to 10 degrees more warming from a heat island effect. In Dallas, Texas, they created a city that is very hot and people can barely live there, although they have a lot less humidity than we do, because of the way they did their zoning and all this concrete is taking in the solar radiation and it's stored in the buildings and then it radiates at night and there's no relief for the population. And we're doing this over and over again in light of the fact that we know how not to do it, but we choose just to do the same old thing we've always done. Next. So here's our beautiful city, and I honestly think we have one of the most spectacular places in the world to live. And I mean, seriously, I live here because I love it, right? I could live anywhere, and I do have a place in Colorado, which I also love. But this is really special, what we have here. But the zoning and land use that we engage in the next 5 or 10 years is going to tell the story. We're either going to make this a livable city or it will get less livable every year. And that's a choice we're going to make. Next. So this is really amazing. We have in Sarasota since 1970, 54 more risky heat days than we had. Think of that, that's almost 2 months more of really hot heat, 540% more than we had, you know, when our memory of kids, we don't necessarily remember how much cooler it was. But these are measurements made right here in Sarasota. Next. Summer nights. Since 1970 are 6 degrees warmer than they were. That's huge. On average, 6 degrees at night. So instead of getting down to 72, it gets down to 78. 72 and 78 are really, really different when the humidity is 70%. And this is a product of our climate warming, but more and more, the heat island effect is creeping into this. And the rate of change is pretty steep. There's no reason for this to get cooler. It's going to get hotter, and we know that. So next. So if we combine hot summer days and nights, and what I mean by that is nights where the temperature does not get below 80 degrees now. It's moved up from 3 to 8, so it's almost tripled, and it's rising every year. Next. So what can we do? Trees turn out to be easy, cheap, and effective. Doesn't cost millions and millions of dollars to do this. So say the power of trees. It removes, this is for Sarasota. 10 million tons of carbon are removed by trees. 8,000 gallons of storm runoff are avoided per tree, per mature tree. 147 million pounds of CO2 are absorbed by our trees in Sarasota every year. The more trees we plant, and I mean mature trees, not twigs that take 25 years to grow, because they don't do anything, the more we're going to help ourselves with our carbon recycling. And if every community did this all over the world, we could slow climate warming, right? It's on a runaway freight train right now. So next. When we have 40% tree coverage on a street, it cuts the temperature down about 25 degrees under that canopy, over the ambient temperature. We don't have to have one tree, then another. 40% along a boulevard of canopy trees will cut the temperature on an afternoon, summer day by 25 degrees. So you talk about building a livable city, that's what you want. It can be 95 degrees outside and people can walk up and down the streets and they're fine. You plant palm trees along every street, they cook. And we're cooking ourselves. I love palm trees, right? I don't want to give up palm trees, but they're not going to give us shade and they don't sequester carbon. One Florida oak sequesters over 1,000 pounds of carbon in its lifetime. Palm tree 50. That's a fact. So you can see how the CO2 equivalents change. And so when we plant trees, we should know this. Select trees that grow well in Florida and do the job of filtering water, mitigating storm runoff, sequestering carbon, and providing a cooler environment for people who live here. So this is well known and it's in the literature. Is it being considered when we design our new developments? Not really. Next. So certainly trees improve the urban quality of life. They're natural air conditioners. They reduce temperature and they lower air conditioning costs of surrounding buildings by 20 to 30%. So it's just amazing that we have these tools and we're not using them. When we love trees, everybody says they do, but we don't really think about when we're designing. What should we do? This should be one of the first things we think of, not the last thing. Next. So a small tree, that's 1 or 2, doesn't do much in sequestering carbon, but as they get bigger, they do. That's the curve. So the main thing is plant the right trees, don't plant twigs, buy some good sized trees and put them in, and that's what we want to do, especially in our city. Okay, next. So breezeways are really important. This is where zoning comes in. We're very, very fortunate in Sarasota that every afternoon we have a sea breeze because we have a Gulf of Mexico that is relatively cool compared to the afternoon land. And that means the winds blow from the ocean, water, into downtown. But yet our zoning for 18-story buildings is aligned to block that sea breeze. All we have to do is continue to do what we're doing, and we're going to build up that heat island effect. That's why what we need to do is a property owner who has the rights to build an 18-story building needs to be told, hey, you have an alternative. You can build a 4-story building here and we'll give you 12 stories somewhere else. You trade and that will help us cool our city and allow people to live here all summer. These are things we can do. We should not, in my opinion, keep growing the exceptions in a 10-story building area to allow 18-story buildings for whatever reason. We know at the end of the day, it's about money. How much money will the developer make on that piece of property? I don't blame them for one. But not at the expense of the people who are going to live here and have to deal with the heat island effect that is being created, whether it's purposeful or not. So direct airflow is important. We have to reduce the ability of these buildings to accumulate heat, and we have to enhance the evapotranspiration, which we get when we have trees and when we lower the surface temperatures. This is how you design a city in the era of climate warming. And Sarasota is ground zero for this. And we're developing so fast, we have incredibly good choices we could still make. Next. So, oops, that's kind of, can you like downplay this a little or like too big? But anyway, on this side, what this says since 1950, we've had 12 inches of sea level rise. The Climate Center made a forecast for 2050 4 years ago, that by 2050, we're gonna add another 11 inches. So the sea level, the ground on Siesta Key that used to be 5 feet above sea level, by 2050, will only be 3 feet above sea level. That means every storm we get will create flooding. It won't have to be a hurricane. Knowing that, do we want people to rebuild the same old thing because that's what they want to do? They may not know this. One of our climate and human health topics next week is all the people who are suffering out on the Keys now. Naturally, they want to get their life back as soon as possible, but they have an opportunity to do it different. But that drive, let's get back to normal, will actually just create the same situation again that they're fearing now, and they're in a weakened condition. Mentally speaking, the stress of what they have gone through is really pretty epic. And we're forcing people to make these decisions, or they're forcing themselves to make it at a time when they're not really in the right headspace to make these decisions. That's why we have to help them and inform them with this information so they can make better decisions for themselves. Some of them can build up, some can't. Some of them may be better off if they move to higher ground and not have to go through this again, a year or two from now, or 5 years from now, or whenever they do. These are choices we can make right now to lower the risk and lower the impact in our own community right now. Next. Well, for some reason, this is, can you minimize this a
The
little?
TV that's not showing, it's showing on the other users are seeing the full screen. The TV is not displaying.
It looks like it's just sized, whatever the, I don't know if you can like, oh, that's better. There you go. Okay, so this is really, 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 really important. So right now we have a shoreline on Sarasota Bay. The good news is those barrier islands that are getting beat up are protecting us. That's what nature designed them to do. But now we have tens of thousands of people living there with thousands of structures. And barrier islands move around. That's what they do. They're sandspits, okay? But they don't now because we have homes, streets, and walls, and everything. Hey, we can't change the past, but we can modify the future, okay? So Sarasota Bay is now receiving storm surges that it never did before. We're seeing them more and more often. In 1 year, in the last 12 months, St. Armand's has flooded 5 times. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 5 times. 4 of them were hurricanes that were, most of those storms, except for one, were well off the coast. I don't know what they're thinking. Do they think that this is going to be different? That this is somehow a fluke? It's not. So if we care about our tax base, we've got to help these people make decisions to build more resilient structures. It doesn't mean we have to move off the Keys. It just means that what's out there has to be able to take normal weather, which is becoming, these storms are becoming normal for us now. They're not 100-year storms or 1,000-year storms. They're really becoming the way it is in a climate-warmed world. So soft shorelines are really, really important along Sarasota Bay, that we don't build any more walls, that we don't have riprap along the shoreline. We need soft shorelines that can absorb the surges when we get them. We can't have buildings right up against the shore, because when the wave action comes in and hits those buildings, it reflects that energy to the north and south of that wall, and it digs out the shoreline to the north and the south. And that's just conservation of energy in physics. So we know this. So when we make our designs now, we have to make sure they're resilient. When we build a sidewalk like this outside, we need porous material, not concrete, so the water can percolate through and be filtered, and we don't have stormwater issues from runoff. These are all things that we should do. We just built a new park downtown in the Rosemary District. It's the cutest thing you've ever seen. But they missed the opportunity. They put down tiles that water can't penetrate. So what does that do? It runs off into our storm sewer system. That park was just built this year. We could have done it different. It would have looked just as pretty and it would have been more functional. But we're not getting this basic information into our planning process. And it's exasperating for somebody like me to see these opportunities just go by when we should be thinking about them. Okay, next. I tell you what, I spent years on live TV, and this happened all the time. Okay, so now, this is St. Petersburg, which is really Port Manatee, and this is our closest gauge station, and you know, we averaged less than one flooding day a year back here in 1950, and you can see how it's gone up year after year. It's going to continue to go up because the sea level rise is going up and the storms are getting worse. So the trend is right there. The data is significant. It's 4 times what it used to be. Okay, next. This is St. Armand Circle. This storm was 100 miles off the coast. It was not a direct hit. This happens all the time in Florida. So how many times can these people do this with this geometry? If we allow this to continue to happen without thinking about it, we're going to grind our economy down. We're going to lose this tax base. And one thing a community can't do is do that. There's an old adage if you're an entrepreneur. You can do anything, you can make mistakes, you can do anything. One rule, do not run out of money. Okay, so if you care about money, you better care about climate warming and its impacts. Because these are where our choices are right now, today. What are we doing different right now than we did before we had 3 hurricanes in 65 days? Anything?
I gather there are pumps at St. Armand's that are supposed to be pumping out the water.
So
Is that just a ridiculous idea to deal with?
well, it's absurd. It's not ridiculous, it's absurd. All right, because when the sea level rises, where are you going to pump the water
Yeah,
to?
you're gonna pump it like that.
The sea level out there is the same as it is in there's nowhere to pump it. Now, there's a difference between rainwater in the street and seawater in the street. I've been trying to get this through. Seawater is a different thing. You get seawater when the sea rises, right? If it rains hard and you get water in the street, you can pump it out, assuming the sea level is low. But you can't, if the water rises, there's nowhere to pump it. That's what this is. So 4 of the 5 floods we had out here were sea level salt water. Only one was due from rain. And yes, the pump failed. But putting pumps out there is not going to do it. It's absurd to think in this day and age that we don't understand the difference between street flooding and sea level rising. It's water. That's the only thing that's similar. So that's a great question, and it's a great big misconception. Next. Okay, so living shorelines, elevated infrastructure, floodable public spaces. The Bay is a wonderful example of an opportunity. It's not just to filter the water. It's to protect downtown Sarasota from storm surge. It's both ways. 51 acres of land to absorb water, filter the water, and protect downtown Sarasota from storm surge. Selby has the same opportunity. The Ringling has the same opportunity. New College has the same opportunity. USF has the same opportunity. 5 crown jewels within about 5 miles on the Sarasota shoreline that are all going to spend tens of millions of dollars doing new stuff. But will we do it like we don't know? Or will we do it like we do know? That's the question. So, water resistant buildings. Why are we putting drywall in the buildings that are being redone on St. Armand Circle? Those walls should be made of plastic, not fiberboard. We know how to build infrastructure that is waterproof. Why don't we do it? We know the water's coming. Tidal gauges and pumping stations. We do need those. We need to measure what's going on around here, not just react to it. And accessible waterfronts. So these are really key parts of designing Sarasota 2050. All of them need to be done. There isn't one answer, there's 1,000 answers. Next. So Sarasota's future is unique. It's either going to be a climate resistant community or it's just going to be another place. There's going to be pain in a climate warmed world, but there does not have to be suffering. Suffering is a choice. We can suffer through this, or we can take the bull by the horns and make our community less threat oriented by the decisions we make. We can't change. Some people think we can change the weather. I can assure you that that is not true. Because if we could, man, I would have made a lot of money. Okay, next. So this is just a summary slide, and I made this because all of you are welcome to this, that this is basically all the things I talked about today. This is just a smattering. I could do another 20. And, you know, these are the kinds of things that an organization like this should be talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, but if you're not talking about this, you're not talking about what we need. So, questions?
Let's see, board members first. Questions? Yeah, Clark?
Yeah, someone heard a comment about engineers in the city using old data instead of embracing a new concept of what's coming and what's.
So this is the
something
inertia.
that's bigger than just
Yeah.
one shot, one small idea.
Yes, and so I've been trying to get the context right on this too. So, the way FEMA does its stuff, and this is historical, we've been doing this forever, is it looks back 100 years and it says, okay, what was the flooding during this 100 years? The problem with that is that climate doesn't exist anymore. So when we use the 100-year floodplain to plan the future, we're planning for the climate of the past, not the climate of the future. I've been trying to get this into people. The engineers, they know the formula, but they're not thinking about how the formula is made up. I would say that if you use data that's more than 20 years old, forget it. The climate changed around 1995. It was dramatic. Since then, we had double the hurricanes we had then. In the last 8 years, we've had 10 major hurricanes strike the Gulf Coast. In the 1900s, it took 50 years for that to happen. So that's just a fact. If we're not designing for the future, what are we designing for? We're going to spend the money anyway. We might as well do it right.
Is there any indication that FEMA is going to do that?
I would say no. I would say we just spent $1 trillion on a thing called Inflation Reduction Act, and that did not get done. That was probably the single most important thing that could be done, because every building, every city is designed to those specifications, and everybody knows it's outdated.
Okay, we're starting to have a time issue, I'm afraid. Other questions on the board? Nobody? Bob?
We obviously lost an awful lot of trees just across the street in Pioneer Park. We lost
Everywhere.
We lost, probably 30, 40 trees of big substantial trees. How do we go about, like you said, you can't plant a twig. You need to plant something of substantial. Obviously, substantial requires a budget, which I'm sure our mayor knows about. And what do we do to try and replace those trees as fast as possible? And obviously it's not here. The other issue kind of associated with that is, how do you plant a substantial tree in a 5-foot right of way?
Yeah, well, I think, there's a lot of issues around this, but let me just give you a context, because I don't really know all the answers, but I can just give you the context. In the last 5 years, the tax base has increased 80%. How much more money are we spending on resilience and mitigation and adaptation than we did before? Where is it going? I'm not saying it's going evaporating, but these are choices. We have the money, we're spending it on different priorities. It's just not a priority. So how do you plant a tree? I mean, you go to a nursery and you get a truck and you move it and you put it in the ground. That's how you do it.
That needs to be part of our overall plan to recover from the storms, is to try and replace that. Patrick loves the fact that we have a park bench over here that doesn't have a tree over it, so it's hot to sit there.
Yeah.
Well, we used to have trees there.
Well, it's a good example of how all climate comes down to the local level. All the decisions we need to make that are going to improve our life right here in our backyard, and it's up to us to do it. It's not up to the government or DeSantis or anybody else to do it. It's up to us to do it. And we keep talking about them instead of us. It's so frustrating. The last thing I want to just say on this is, if we decide to really do this, there is no place I've ever lived that has the talent that we have right here in this community. All we need to do is decide. I'd say, let's get on with it. If we can't figure out how to plant 20 trees, we're not going to win the war here.
Okay, I'm,
Let
Mayor,
Ms.
and I'm afraid we got a big time problem.
I'm not
Mayor,
gonna,
Mayor,
I'm
please.
not gonna take too long, I just
Okay,
wanted
please.
to say,
Yeah, go ahead.
this is like so, timely, because I'm planning my State of the City address for Friday, okay? And decided to talk about where we were, sort of what we've been doing, where we are with the hurricane, and where we're going. And where I was going with where we're going is we have to think about resiliency and in everything we do. So I'm gonna get with you tomorrow, if we could, and just,
You bet.
so to see what I can put in, because I think it's crucial.
Bob, we would love to ask, we're just desperately out of time.
In closing, I just want to say, I have offered a 2-hour course to every commissioner in every city to sit down with me and just hear a few things about climate, because once they know, it's hard to ignore it. But if you don't know what you don't know, you don't know. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wow. That was good and timely, and thank you. Yeah,
I know.
scary at the same
Much of my pearls.
Moving on, we have, we want, under new business now, we have, some new, silver, members, and is the Coldwell Banker, is the individual from Coldwell Banker, I'm forgetting the name, they're not here, they're applying for associate membership in Southern Cross Contracting. Steve Johns, Steve, are you here? Okay, well, they are applying for membership. And the other is Dave Chislett, and I know he's here, but what is our formality is to make a motion to accept these three entities, if you will, into the DSCA family.
So moved.
Okay, and a second, okay, and all in favor? Okay, so welcome, and what I'd like to do now is Beso Condominiums is represented by Dave. Do you go by Dave or?
Well, my mom and dad, she calls me Dave.
Okay, just like, and David, may I invite you up and just say a few words about, come on up here and just tell us, I think Beso is 149 condos, if I'm not mistaken. Come up and give us like a minute about your community, if you would.
I won't say anything about climate change.
Okay.
So my name is Dave Chislett. I'm a recent resident of Beso. I'm VP as well as treasurer there. And you know Bill Wendell, he's on the board as well. And we are a new community with 149 units and right down the street. I'm excited about this organization and I'm glad to be part of it and hope to contribute and also learn a lot. So thanks so much for everybody.
Good, welcome, welcome. Good, moving along, I don't think we have any old business as far as city updates. Kathy, do you have anything? I've got a couple.
Did we skip by one item on the new business?
Oh, yeah, sorry. The new associate member benefits, this was in your board backup package, a schedule that is, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but the plan is to leave things the same as far as
That was the recommendation from the chair, Jamie, so that the associate members' fees and benefits would remain the same. We made an increase last year, so it's going to remain the same as what the proposal is.
And I think the thinking here is just to do a better job at recruiting and retention as opposed to raising fees, which we did last year. So do we need a motion
Yes, I'll make a
on this?
motion to the board to approve the 2025 associate member benefits and fees. Second.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The one thing we did talk about is increasing as a separate item we'll bring back, is attendance at workshops is $10 for members and $15 for non-members. I think we're gonna be coming back with a recommendation for non-members, maybe bump that to 12. That'll be discussed subsequently. Okay, moving on to city update. Kathy, I think you didn't have anything. The downtown Sarasota master plan, the committee was formed Monday, yeah. And there are 13 members. I think it started at 9 and went to 11 and 13. And congratulations, Ken is on the committee, and Jamie Still is, well, so we have 2 DSCA family members, if you will, on that group, and it looks like there's Ken, do you have any idea about timing of getting
No,
started?
they've told us that we need to make appointments to take the oath of office, to do a review of the sunshine law and set up our email accounts. They're in the process of hiring a facilitator for the committee, and then they will let us know about our first meeting. They haven't scheduled a meeting yet.
Okay. And I also, there's going to be a liaison person.
Well, that's a facilitator.
That's the
That's what I
facilitator I'm
meant.
getting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's good news. Any further discussion on that?
Shows the wisdom of our city commission.
Yeah.
1.2 DSCA members, along with their wealth of knowledge and expertise when you look at the boxes checked.
I agree. And as far as the city manager update, I think we all know that Doug Jeffcoat has been appointed named interim city manager, and I believe the identification of a search firm to do a search for the new city manager is underway, so I don't have any further updates. Moving ahead, committee status reports, Ken, on the Performing Arts Center and anything else. What do you have?
Yes. There's a question about what's going on. Because the implementation agreement hasn't been approved by the city commission. Debbie Trice seems to have a problem with the medium-sized theater, and there seems to be a delay connected with that, but nobody seems to be able to tell me. I've talked to the city attorney, I've talked to Bill Waddell, I've talked to Tanya Moskalenko. I've sent an email to Bob Fournier. I can't get a clear answer, but two things I did get. Bob Fournier, there were several questions that were asked of the city, and one of them was, does that implementation agreement have to be approved by November 30th? And Bob said, no, his reading of the partnership agreement is that it has to be submitted to the city commission by November 30th, but the city commission can approve it at a later date. The other issue is, does the implementation agreement require the commission to accept the concept plan? I don't get that. A concept is not a plan. And a concept will be modified as things go along, as the discussion evolves. So that's got to be clarified. And I asked Bob, I pointed that out to Bob in an email on Sunday, and I haven't heard from him yet. So I don't know what the hell's going on.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah.
And the mayor is quiet.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I know as much as you do right now.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay. Anything else? Arts and culture?
Yes. Yes. There's a Purple Ribbon Committee meeting tomorrow night. There wasn't one in November or October, but the November meeting is going to be interesting because there are 3 things that will happen. One is Brian Hirsch is going to report on a survey that he did. I'm sure it's going to show what the survey that I did several years ago showed, and that is that there is a demand for a medium-sized theater. The other is Mary Bensel is going to report on the damage to the hall. I ran into Mary at a social event on Sunday night, and she's really distressed. She thinks it's going to cost at least $10 million for repairs to the building. And it was amazing. The water did not come in through the grand foyer. It came in through a doorway further up, further north on the side of the building, and it came in through the doors, went down, and then came back up into higher levels of the building. So it was incredible. But the Karen's engineering firm will be doing a building assessment update too tomorrow. So I'll be there to find out what they have to say.
All right, thank you. Moving on to associate events, Jamie is not here. Our October workshop, thank you, Kathy, for the role you played, and Jamie, and that. I think the reviews were pretty good. And I think the feedback we got from our associate members was encouraging. I don't want to speak for them, but we had round numbers, 100 people there, and got some good reviews from Steve Cover, so that's always good. We're just trying to keep it up. The December Homeless Town Hall planning continues for that. Kathy, Jamie, and I, and Peter are actively working on that. Last time I looked, we had 30 or 40 people registered already, and we're still basically a month out. So the panel, if we get the panel locked in.
I was going to report that.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Just part of the homeless.
Okay, all right. And then member recruiting, I alluded to that before. I'm trying to get hopefully some success at 2 or 3 more buildings. Optimistic about adding to our family of condos in different regions of DSCA. So that's going along okay. And one item I covered, the holiday party. Planning for that is underway, and we would like to thank in advance for the stepped up to the plate and is a partial sponsor for some of our expenses for that. So I've invited the city commissioners and a number of 5 or 6 key staff people. I've got some acceptances. Green space, Bunting kind of did the green space kind of thing. On the homeless committee, Peter, what have you done?
Just quickly, you'll be able to read a full report. I've just given them to brief minutes. On the forum, Catherine, Jamie, and David and I have been meeting, and we put together quite an interesting event, I think, and one that's going to be very, very informative. The only problem is the moderator. The moderator now has a very, very high bar set by the prior forum we had with Ray Collins as the moderator, and what a great panel. So we are trying to do that. We'll have a full schedule of announcements coming out periodically to generate interest. And right now we have accepted on the panel is Joe Polzak, who's going to be the future Bob Fournier. At present, he's going to present on the panel as the assistant attorney responsible for advising the Sarasota Police Department. We're also going to have Deidre D.D. Jones, coordinator of the City of Sarasota Office of Homeless Response, who also is in the police department, reports to the police department, engages the hot teams and their coordination. And then Taylor Neighbors is the Chief Administrative Officer of Suncoast Partnership to End Homelessness. I met with Katie Ross, and she is moving on from her position prior to this event. And Taylor, who's just a wonderful person, if you ever met her, she's been 7 years at the organization, and before that she was well connected in the community. Brenda Downing Wiggins is Director of Operations of the Salvation Army, Megan Howell, founder and executive director of Second Half Homes. And then we are trying to have, and almost concluded, the engagement of an on-the-street police officer who works with the homeless in uniform, and how that person sees the role of what's happening with people on the street and enforcement. So that's going to be really, really great. The other thing I want to mention is that Storm Helene wiped out our City Watch program. We were partnering with Sarasota Police Department. We were going to kick it off on October 1st, Tuesday, October 1st. Had to postpone it because of that on National Night Out. National Night Out now is going to be May 1st, 2025, and we will do more presentations on the City Watch program as we get close to that date. Lastly, I want to put out a plea for everybody here, anybody listening, and I'd like to get an email out that for the Homeless Forum. One of the things I noticed in forums is we collect all the cards for questions at the end, and once in a while we do get to answer some of those questions, and it gets a little hectic and chaotic. I'd like people to send me any question or concern they have about homelessness and send it to my email. This is not tricky, it's, I don't know how many, I already get a lot of emails. Eagle641@verizon.net, I'll publish that. I want to hear what you want to hear. What do you want to know about the situation of homelessness in the city? What's concerning you? Because I sometimes, we've been doing this every year for 4 or 5 years, I always leave thinking, this was great, but I never know if we answered the question that we set out to do. We don't really do an evaluation. If I can have some of your questions and work them in, I think this, you will be more satisfied as an audience, and I'll be more satisfied as a presenter. So thank you very much.
Good.
Can I ask him a quick question?
Yeah.
You know, Matt Walsh in his editorial last week about this city commission race mentioned the chronic homeless population. He said in 2018 it was 351, and in 2023 it was 80. Is that true?
It's a definitional problem. We did not have 350 chronic homeless. We did have, and actually that number's not correct. We did have on the one-day count done by Suncoast Partnership, and you'll learn all about that at the forum. We did have at least 350 unsheltered people. A chronic homeless person is somebody who's been in and out, in and out, in and out, maybe 25 years. That number is closer to 50 than 350. So, but it was higher in 2018 as well. So I was kind of, I see Matt once in a while. But it's a definitional problem created by the Housing and Urban Development Office Department in Washington, and the way they have to sort it.
Good, thank you. Transportation Committee. Roger?
Well, I'll speak briefly to Breeze on Demand, which is holding a couple of public hearings in terms of raising the cost from $2 to $4 on demand service. It's recently published a count, I guess would be the phrase, of the use, and they've had a 500% increase in usage. Not so much in our area as in Venice and in Northport, where it's been, appears to be phenomenally successful. It works here, but they're discontinuing the service in Siesta. However, Siesta, coming out here, they're extending their bus service, what we call Bay Runner, to downtown. And I think that started already. What's the name of it? Do you remember? No.
It's Siesta Key Trolley or something.
Yeah,
like that,
okay.
I think.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of anxious to take a ride down to Siesta Key, or maybe encourage them to come up here. What else we got? Well, Main Street Streetscape.
I had lunch with Nick Patel and really there's not much, they're working away on that. Boulevard of the Arts and 10th is kind of on the shelf, to be honest with you. I mean, at 60%, there's some discussion now because of what's going on at Hyatt. It has to be sorted out. That was discussed at the DRC today. But in Nick's mind, he's looking for funding before he wants to do anything more. And so hopefully they're working on that and can get something. We don't want all these things on the shelf. Let me also add to the Breeze on Demand. I presented last month the city runner idea, and I did get some time on CCNA agenda this past Saturday and presented a abbreviated version of that to CCNA, and to my surprise, it was very enthusiastically received, and Richard Harris asked for a vote or an indication of approval, and Judy, you were there. I mean, it seemed like people were pretty enthusiastic about the concept. Yeah, so the question now is there's a lot of moving parts to this, but I think at this point we've got people interested in the concept and hopefully the attention of the city commissioners, so it's out there. Now, how to go about this in a way that makes sense, if that's not going to annoy too many people. I continue to see this as an economic block. It's not only nice, good for the tourists, but this is good for a post-storm environment. So I'm jazzed about it. I hope you can tell, and try and kind of move this again. Okay, I think anything else on transportation? No. Okay, zoning. Peter Blanton, Peter's on a seasonal. Peter, is there anything you want to mention there on the zoning and?
Well, so I think everyone knows the Hyatt property is being redeveloped, the Hyatt Hotel, and there will be a workshop, even though they're not required to have one. And that's going to be November 11th at 5:30 at the Hyatt Hotel. There are a lot of issues about staging and because it will impact the residents nearby and people who use Boulevard of the Arts. So I think that's one of the big issues. There's still a lot of zoning stuff that's still out there. We still need to get an update on the noise sound ordinance and how that may work with the recently adopted zoning text amendment regarding restaurants, bars, and nightclubs. So we all look forward to Bob Fournier providing additional guidance on that before he retires. I see there's a bullet for 1000 North Restaurant at Boulevard. There's, as I think most people are aware, there's been an empty restaurant space at the Boulevard for some years, and that will be utilized by a members only restaurant. So I don't know what it's going to cost to join, but we'll see. And I would guess the other thing is on 1260 Palm, they asked for some administrative adjustments. This is the developer. Development Services did grant them. However, those opposing the development has taken this to the planning board, assuming they get affected person status, I guess. And then they'll take it further to the city commission if they're able to. So, and given that there's been some change in the city commission, that may not be, there may be more of an issue of whether that'll get approved or not versus the old city commission.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay, I can add to that, Peter.
Yeah.
I was at the DRC today. The Miramar project or community workshop was before the DRC today, and generally speaking, it seems like pretty favorably received, if I'm understanding things. So that's going to be working its way through the process, if you will, including if it were to proceed, a comp plan change because of zoning from downtown core to downtown Bayfront, but it's in the system. And then the Fourth Way Alley vacation matter was at the DRC today. What's happening on that project is the site plan and alley vacation request are kind of happening at the same time, and how they get married appropriately, I'm not sure I'm following at this point, but if there were to be proffers, they're saying would not have proffers because it would incorporate any requested agreements into the site plan, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but I mean, that's way stronger, is to have it in the site plan approval document as opposed to a promise, if you will. So nothing more specific.
Also, on that one, I discovered something when I was examining the EDCM. And it talks in the EDCM about the tree distance, et cetera, but it also defines speed there. And it talks about the context-oriented street design. And US 41 from Third, or actually all the way from Gulf Street up to 10th Street is defined as downtown core context. Therefore, and as a arterial street, maximum speed limit is 25 miles an hour. And tree distances for 25 miles, less than 35 miles an hour, it's only 30 feet center, not 40 feet center. So there is some disconnect in terms of what is being reported and how staff is reviewing such plans, especially when they have a context that was just presented to us about shutting off air conditioning vents and cooking rosemary. So that heat bubbled one heat would be the picture to go along with the old slogan of rosemary rising. The temperature rising in rosemary. So,
Okay.
Anyway, that's to be considered.
And one other thing to bring up, which is healthy, is at the DRC this morning, is the issue of trees and planting trees and the conflict with utilities. That is the elephant in the room that is paralyzing us because we're not dealing with the need to move water lines, sewer lines, whatever lines, I will never plant the damn trees. So that is out there now. And we as a community and city government need to face it head on because this need is, this want for trees is 80% of the time, 70% of the time constrained by infrastructure. And we're not going to deal with the root cause. We're going to be, the root cause.
The root cause. Nice segue.
Okay.
Nice segue.
All right.
Did the DRC deal with that with the inclusion of root cells?
There, that was brought up.
Yeah, as a way to contain the roots so that they don't interfere with the pipes.
Exactly. I
It's a
think
long-term ROI.
the utilities department and the planning department and this department need to be talking to each other more, let's just say that, because there is a disconnect, and that's the root cause. Okay, all right. That's all I think I've got. Bay Park Conservancy, Bob?
There was obviously they had the second anniversary that we postponed, but they've moved around because of the storms. Obviously, the storms did an awful lot of damage. As far as that goes, they're talking about, raising the seawall up to try and prevent what happened recently. Obviously, phase two's budget, I think, was $65 million, which I think 75% of it's done by the TIF. But the problem that you have, obviously, is that now we're going to have to rebuild some of the infrastructure that was there, which is the piers that are there and so forth. The other side, too, talking about the Sunset Pier, from my past real estate experience, getting something built is going to take a long time of it going through all of the different various things. I think one thing they did is, raise the, they want the pier elevation raised from 5 feet to 12 feet on the pier itself. And they're going to, it's going back and forth. And again, past experience dealing with the Corps of Engineers and all of the environmental things. I don't hold your breath on the Sunset Pier. It might be, by the time the bay's done, it might get put in. Never know. That's a personal opinion, not what something they said, but I've seen it take a long, long time for any kind of structure like that, especially when you have the changes being made. As far as phase two goes, the other side is that obviously phase two is dependent upon the Foreman Art Center, and it's sort of a chicken and egg story on that as far as how phase two gets finished out.
Yeah, and AG at the TIF board said that Sunset Pier price tag was approximately $20 million.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why it's that's like a jaw-dropping number.
Yeah.
And why it is being put off, and we'll see it put off. Okay, thanks. CCNA, this past Saturday's meeting, Jonathan Lewis, the county administrator, made a presentation. It was filmed. I would encourage people to watch his remarks. One thing, how I'm in the weeds with numbers. We think we're growing rapidly here in downtown, which is about 5.5% in the last 4 years. Well, county's growing 10%, okay, and down south 20% in 4 years. So Roger was talking about the use of the breeze on demand. We think we're in a growth spurt, and if you combine Manatee and Sarasota County, now we're approaching 1 million people. City of Sarasota is about 6%. Okay, so we, I think, need to be mindful of those numbers, our growth and relative attention we will appropriately get, and so forth. But the one key takeaway from Jonathan was he talked about the most important thing that he does is in the next month or two is setting strategic priorities at the board level, not the budget, but setting those strategic policy-related objectives. And that's one thing I think I would challenge us to think a bit more about. I think we're doing some of that now as a city, but is there something to be learned by what the county is doing? I want to take a look at that, because I think there's some food for thought from that. The final thing on the 2025 CCNA membership is $60, so we'll join. As far as a representative to CCNA, I am happy to have someone else raise their hand and volunteer their Saturday mornings. I would come maybe most times as a guest, but if there's somebody on the board or an active resident matter who would like to fulfill that role, I am happy to pass the baton.
We are very happy you're doing it.
You do such a good job.
Okay, we do need an alternate though. Kathy, you?
Yeah, I don't mind it, but I mean, just a suggestion, I mean, we could all alternate. We could all go pick them up.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
I will be your alternate,
I-
just don't miss it.
I will continue to do it. As far as the Rosemary district, I really don't have any new news there, I don't think. Okay, now is time for our associate members, and I know how many.
Is it all right if I just say
Yeah.
something?
Yeah,
On behalf
no,
of Group
if you got something new,
Yeah, I
we
do.
would love to hear it.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I'm Edie Moore from the Virgin Yacht Club, and we have some flyers. If you want to take them back to your respective condo associations, we're having some upcoming events. Some are complimentary, and we just wanted to extend an outreach to people in this condo association. Thank you.
Good. And seeing no other associate members? Okay, as far as comments from member reps, are there any? Jim Lample? Jim Lample, you normally have a comment to make, or you have something for the group to share?
I had several, but I
Jim
forgot
Lample,
by the
Jim.
time you. I wanted to know from Bob Bunting how much the water temperature of the bay has risen in the last 20 or 30 years.
It's at 5 degrees.
Is it 5?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've got a note.
Good, 50 left, 50 you.
Yeah.
May I take a quick note? Not a condo rep, but
Yeah, of course.
tomorrow night, I've been working with Megan Howell, second home, on a fundraiser tomorrow night at the Church of the Palms on Bee Ridge. They're bringing in Tracy Kidder, well-known author, and Jim Connell, which this book is about. It's a free event, starts at 6:30. If you're welcome to come, I'd love to have you there. This is a really, really different approach, and it's how do you provide health care to the indigent and vagrant and homeless population. He did it in Boston, and he has a lot to say about this, and I think you'll find it very interesting. It's also a book signing. To purchase the book, 20% of the proceeds from the book go to second house.
Okay, any other thing? If not, our board meeting next month is on the 4th with the Urbanite Theater representative, I don't know the individual's name, presenting, and then for January, I think I have Alvi Morales, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that. She's the chief transportation planner for the city. So she's queued up to be our guest speaker January 8th or whenever.
So the homeless event is on Monday, December 9th. At the Selby Library. Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Boy, I thought we were gonna run late. We made it up. So if nothing else, let's consider us adjourned and have a drink.